The Undercountry Music News is an excerpt of the weekly internet broadcast Undercountry Music, which features music from great country artists you won't hear on mainstream radio, as well as a roundup of the most interesting country music news of the week without all the fluff. To listen and subscribe to the full weekly episode, please visit undercountrymusic.com or simply subscribe to the Undercountry Music Podcast on iTunes. Let's get into it.
When my beast unleashes, it makes headlines, baby. And this week is no different because it is time for the Undercountry Music News! The Undercountry Music News is the portion of the show where I go on to the legendary robot god Google and I type in the three little words that all robot overlords love to hear. Country music news! And whatever websites show up on the front page of Google for that search term, I go on to each and every one, and I find the actual real and true, as my 5-year-old son Evan likes to say, country music news stories. I dig past the fluff. I dig past the human interest stuff. I dig past the press releases, and I get you the authentic country music news of the past week. All right? And if I go onto one of these websites and they're not doing their job in reporting any country music news, I give them the dreaded Undercountry Music News wet belch of the week. Sounds something like this. I had some tortellini and salmon my lovely wife Michelle made this evening, and I thank her very much for it. She rocked it. Okay? So anyway, let's get into it here. Over at CMT. Okay. You may have heard some brouhaha about this whole dust up here. This big-time hotshot radio programmer, he's like in charge of programming something like 300 stations. Keith Hill, he's been in the business like a million years. And he decided to start running his mouth lately about women in country music. Basically saying the male country artists are the lettuce in his industry's salad, meaning radio. And females are the tomatoes. Now, it might not be the greatest analogy, but what he's basically saying is that the magic formula to keep mainstream country listeners listening the longest, which is what his job is to play males at a pretty much 5-to-1 ratio, which is kind of what ladies have been complaining about in the world of country music over the past couple of years. Well, his statements have caused a major uproar amongst female artists like Martina McBride, Miranda Lambert, and Jennifer Nettles of Sugarland, who are crying foul and saying it's total BS, and Mr. Hill is a chauvinist, D-bag, and Mr. Hill says he's getting tons of hate mail. But you know what? We'll get into more about this a little later. But anyway, CMT writer Allison Bonaguro caught up with Mr. Hill and asked him to expand a bit on his statements. And you can read a laundry list of quips from her conversation with him over at CMT. You know, honestly, a list of quips without the context of how the questions were asked or how they were framed or the context of the conversation seems a little bit like a hit list piece to me, a hit piece to me, after reading his quips, though, I can't imagine the context mattered a whole lot because, this guy, he's like 4 foot, he's like 4 foot down, in a grave, and, somebody's got to pull the shovel out of this man's hands because he just keeps digging himself deeper. Anyway, it's a very entertaining read and really sad too. But anyway, You know what? This guy, he might be abrasive and, all full of himself, but I have to imagine as long as he's been in the business, as much as we may not like what he's saying, and I don't like what he's saying, okay? I think it's a fair question to ask ourselves, how much of it is actually true? That we as country music listeners, well, I don't really listen to mainstream radio. I will say the mainstream country listener, by and large, prefers mainly males with female artists just kind of sprinkled in. I will say the only two modern country artists I'm enjoying much from these days in the more mainstream are both women, Miranda Lambert and Kacey Musgraves, although Kacey doesn't really get a lot of airplay. And she's had enormous success, despite that. Now, I think the rest of the ladies I'm hearing, they sound like sappy, melancholy pop artists to me. And, as for the guys, I don't really hear any modern mainstream country artists I'm digging. And this bro country stuff is just horrible. So, I'm seeing two classes of terrible artists. And, two sexes of terrible artists. And, the one that gets the least airplay is complaining that they don't get as much attention for their terrible music as the other sex does. And they've got a legitimate gripe, but still at the end of the day, pretty much they're all making terrible music, so they can all just go jump off a cliff for all I care. Somebody please wake me up when somebody somewhere makes good country music again. You'll find me in the Americana aisle until that time. In further news over at CMT, a man who is reportedly a food vendor at a Trace Adkins concert on May 23rd, 2015 in Huntsville, Tennessee, allegedly got into a fight with a patron, totally snapped, flipped his wig, and started driving his SUV through the crowd of people. I think this was out in the parking lot, and killed a guy. Not the guy he was fighting. I think he hit like a bunch of people and one guy died. Now his SUV was brought to a stop when another extremely brave person rammed that SUV with their own Jeep, which gave security just enough time to tackle this guy and keep him down. Ladies and gentlemen, heroes do still walk amongst us. We're gonna get on over to Taste of Country now. Garth Brooks has been forced to cancel his upcoming tour dates in Tampa, Florida, due to the Tampa Bay Lightning hockey team making the Stanley Cup Finals, meaning they take precedence over the concert for use of the stadium, which has a lot of Garth fans saying, effing ice holes. Now you see why I can't be on some stations. Right, there's an article over there asking at Taste of Country, asking the question about whether Kacey Musgraves is too country for country music. And that's why she doesn't get that much airplay, despite her being insanely popular right now. Well, apparently, Kacey has committed the crime of having some originality and writing good songs. I don't personally think she's too country for country music. I think she's too country for country radio, and apparently, as successful as she is getting without much support from mainstream country radio, it's not really seeming to matter in her case. Rock on, Kacey. As far as the women being shunned in country music angle goes, there's another article over at Taste of Country where Brian Phillips, head of CMT, is talking about how we need to not be bound by these silly formulas, as Keith Hill uses, because history has shown us that routinely some new thing will come along that will turn it all on its head. And then that will become the new thing and the new norm, which the formula will be based around. So it's silly to be shunning the ladies. And I think he's got a good point there. What I found a whole lot more interesting than that, however, is a video that appears embedded below this article where Billy Dukes, writer over there at Taste of Country, confronts himself about his own opinions that he's been holding about this whole issue of women in country music and, whether they're just being, lousy sports and just whiny, or if they've got a legitimate gripe. And he asked the question, how many women in country music not named Taylor, Carrie, or Miranda, in my opinion, two of those don't make country music and have never made much country music, have had number one hits in the past 10 years? The answer? 9. That's right, less than 1 per year when you take those 3 ladies out of the picture. So is the male chauvinist pig on Music Row keeping the ladies down? Is it us as a society? Or is it a combination of both? Billy Dukes makes some really amazing observations in this video, and I encourage heading over to Taste of Country and having a watch. It's only 2.5 minutes long, and it's well worth it and rather eye-opening. Right, we're going to hobble on over to Country Weekly, where they have a live video of Toby Keith performing the first single from his upcoming album, 35 Mile Per Hour Town. Man, this song, it's great. And it actually says something. Now, Toby is looking a little slower these days, but man, what a great artist he is. Great songwriter. Oh, man. Well worth it. Go check it out. Anyway, over at theboot.com, they have the video for the new Montgomery Gentry song, Folks Like Us. And it's a whole bunch of country cliches jammed into a couple of minutes. These guys, they've got a few really great songs, and I really, really wanted to like this tune. I just don't. It's like someone went down a country music checklist, filled in all the boxes, and then said, here's a song. That's really what it felt like to me. Come on. Right. Also, the duo Halfway to Hazard has reunited. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, Country Standard Time. Let's check in with them and see what they got. They have got the Undercountry Music News. Wet Belch of the Week, because they got nothing zippity doo dah zippity a nothing. Zip dingo bobbity aboo pa bupkis. Except now they got the Wet Belch. Step up your game, Country Standard Time. All right, over at the 615, which is a subsection of Billboard.com. Emmylou Harris and Rodney Crowell are teaming up for a new album. I scanned through the article trying to find the name of the album or anything interesting at all about it and what they're doing now, and the entire blurb was just these two shooting the S with the journalist and not really talking about what they're currently doing. A lot of, good old days kind of talk stuff. But still, if you're into those two and you love some Emmylou and some Rodney, hey, go check it out. Whatever. And Shania Twain clarifies her announcement that she is currently on her farewell tour, and she clarified it meaning that she's not retiring. She just wants to spend more time in the studio making new recordings and have that be her main focus, because she has not focused on that for a while, and she's apparently got tons of new material all taking up space in her brain. And, she got to make room in there. Just pretty soon all these songs are going to go to her midriff, and if she can't expose her midriff for pictures, if she's got it all bloated with songs, she's done for. Because she's the singing midriff lady. Naked midriff. Oh, remember that was scandal. Remember in the 90s how scandalous that was? That Shania Twain was showing her belly button? Wow. How far have we come? All right. Anyway, Shania says she's going to be making music until she dies. Okay. So when Shania Twain dies, are they going to cut a section out of the middle of the casket to leave her midriff exposed? Oh, I'm having too much fun here today. Let's spoil that fun and get over to Rolling Stone country, because they got I can't really muster up another good belch right now. But anyway, they got another Under Country Music News Wet Belch of the Week. And this has been your Under Country Music News. Thank you for listening to the Under Country Music News. The Under Country Music News is just a small excerpt of the weekly internet broadcast Under Country Music, where I play music and have great interviews by lesser-known original country acts. Get on over to undercountrymusic.com, where you can listen and subscribe. Stay under, stay country.